Are you ready for Sonic Mania? Have we pushed it off long enough? You know, I said I was going to make it as the first episode of the new year, but it turned out to be Legos. And then I mentioned about it in previous directs that I was going to do Sonic Mania. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the long-awaited video is here. So, without further ado, get yourself a beverage, sit back, relax. The doctor is in with the blue blur, and we're going to talk about Sonic Mania, brother. Here we go. Here we go. The big moment. The big extravagant moment to talk about the most awesome 2D Sonic game to be released in modern day history since the Genesis era. I'm talking Sonic Mania, brother. We're talking about it here on this show. And it was in the summer of 2016 that the big announcement for this game was unveiled. Actually, two Sonic games were unveiled. There was a 2D side-scroller going back to the original roots that was being developed, and a 3D game at the same time. Man, we were lucky during the 25th celebration of Sonic the Hedgehog to get such a huge announcement that just dropped. Man, people lost their crap when they saw the trailer for the new 2D Sonic game and featuring Studiopolis and that fun music that jives with you with Studiopolis, man. It's just amazing time. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize the Nintendo Switch was coming out until like towards the end of the year, and I saw pre-orders for the new Nintendo system, and I was like, I wonder if Sonic Mania is going to be on the Switch. And that's, I was going to buy the Switch anyway for, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So it was, fingers crossed that Sonic Mania was coming to the Nintendo Switch, and sure enough it was. I was going to get on PC at that point. So, it was released, Sonic Mania, late summer 2017. Sonic Mania drops onto your Nintendo Switch platforms. There was no physical copy yet. That came out a year later when you got the full DLC packed in with it. Yeah, that's a way to sell a game, and I wish I had a physical copy, to be quite honest, for the collection's sake. It was reversible decor for the cover art. You have the basic Nintendo Switch, and then you flip the other side. It was a Genesis looking cartridge. It was sweet. It was amazing. There was so much hype for Sonic Mania, going on for it. And the game itself did not disappoint whatsoever. Well, there might be a little bit of disappointment here and there. We're going to get into some of those things. But let's talk about the development for Sonic Mania real quick. Sonic Mania is pretty much a love letter to long-time Sonic fans. It was created by Sonic fans. Developer Christian Whitehead, who helped engineered remasters of Sonic 1, 2, and CD on the iOS devices on your iPhones, for example, with full widescreen support and added new features. And Sonic 2 got the remake of the Lost Level Hidden Palace Zone added back into there. It was a beautiful, beautiful crafted masterpieces that you could play on mobile devices. And so guess who gets a chance to go all in with Sonic Mania? Christian Whitehead himself, heading it all up and developing this beautiful, beautiful game. Of course, he had a team behind him of helping him out for it. Headcanon was involved, and a few other program designers and such. T. Lopes composed the music and soundtrack for this whole thing. And it is just a magnificent masterpiece between everybody who played a role in developing Sonic Mania. It was for the fans, by the fans, or as Sonic Mania puts it, for the mania, by the mania, whatever that means. For well over 20 years, Sonic the Hedgehog has seen its ups and downs and roller coaster waves. for video games, there's been some great 3D titles. The Sonic Adventure series I thought was fantastic, for what it was, for the 3D graphic standards. Because at the time in 1996, when Mario went 3D, everybody had to go 3D. It was the N64's fault for that. Seeing that, and the PlayStation made its way. Sega Saturn was out, and the Dreamcast came out with the first 3D Sonic game, and we're off to the races with that. Then, of course, Sega stopped becoming a console and now became a software developer, and you saw Sonic Heroes released on the Nintendo GameCube. Sonic on the Nintendo system? Unheard of at the time. But it happened, and they re-released Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 on the Nintendo GameCube as well. But the 3D Sonic games, again, roller coaster waves of good and bad games. You could take Sonic Lost Worlds, for example, because throw it away for all I care, the continuity sake. Sonic 06, another one. Toss it aside. Don't care about that either. But there's been some good ones like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, Unleashes, mixed bag of opinions. Some people hate the Werehog. You know what? It is what it is. But now, with Sonic Frontiers out, they finally did it. They finally made a great 3D Sonic game in the form of Sonic Frontiers. And they set a new pathway, a new era for Sonic development and gaming. And it's amazing. More on that whenever I do get to review Sonic Frontiers. I'm playing it for the second time right now, and it's magnificent still. With the polished design of Sonic Mania, it looked like it came from the Sega Saturn era for 2D gaming. It's very polished, a lot of character animations for sure, some paths to take, the remix of classic stages and with additional pathways, and Act 2 is completely redesigned differently, like in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. They take the Sonic 3 and Knuckles route when it comes to the stage design levels. They're bigger, they're massive, and they have that transition from Act 1 to Act 2 with the mini boss in the middle of it, and they do the cutscenes with it as well, from going from one zone to the next zone. That's a great masterpiece of work. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, to me, is still by far the top 2D Sonic game, probably the top Sonic game in my book of all time. I still go back to it repeatedly over and over and over again, and it's one I still love till this day. And it's still my number one. Even though Sonic Mania comes to a close number one because of how good it is, Sonic 3 Knuckles still tops it for me. Actually, for nostalgia's sake, Sonic 2 should come in number 2. They produce a really good number 2 right there. Yeah. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. But that's how it is. Sonic Mania has those transitions. They have those mini bosses in Act 1, and then they immediately go to Act 2, and the different background of remix music. Again, all developed by T. Lopes for the music department. Kudos to you, my friends. And just such greatness right there. And again, here's where the downside comes for Sonic Mania. They only have 4 brand new zones, while the rest of it is repeat zones from prior Genesis era games, from Sonic 1 to 2 to Sonic 3 and such. You'll find these zones that are rehashed, remixed at least with a different coat of paint. You'll find elements of in say Wacky Workbench, how Chemical Plant is in Act 2. You'll find elements in Act 1 of Stardust Speedway that looks like Marble Garden Zone. You'll find in Press Garden Zone, one of the newer levels, those big rotating drums that are in there. That comes from Sonic 3 and Launch Base Zone. You'll find a lot of similarities and gimmicks that they reuse from other zones to incorporate in, classic zones and the newer zones. So it's great. The game starts you off with Angel Island, going back to the classic run-in from Sonic 3, but instead you run into the hard-boiled heavies who are digging up this Phantom Ruby that transcends time and space and alters everything with it all. The Egg Robots discover this, helping Dr. Eggman mine for this ruby. And of course, Knuckles is out in the distance somewhere else, he gets caught in the crosswave of it all. So Ruby, huh? We got a Phantom Ruby now, and Chaos Emeralds are still involved in this game as part of the adventure. What is a Phantom Ruby? Well, I've got a quote right here, so let's ask the internet to help on this one on the quote. It is a weapon that takes control of people's visual and depth perception to feed false information to the brain, creating a new reality for them, like a dream so real if you bump yourself in it, your sleeping self will bruise. It's hard to believe. A quote from Miles Tails Prower from Sonic Forces. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. You ready for this one? Oh, we get a beverage real quick. Remember when I said they developed 2 games? Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces. Sonic Forces is garbage. Let's just say it right now. Sonic Forces needs to be thrown in the garbage. It is terrible. They tied Sonic Mania to Sonic Forces because they used the Phantom Ruby in Sonic Forces. And guess who shows up in Sonic Forces? Classic Sonic from guess where? Transcending from time and space from Sonic Mania, transporting himself into Sonic Forces plot. So both games are linked together. That's the other negative aspect about Sonic Mania. Is not only is those 2 games are linked together, but there's so much nostalgia, which is great. I love nostalgia. I love the classic zones, but it's so overplayed. How many times do you want to play Green Hill Zone? It's like in every Sonic game anymore. How many times do you want to revisit Chemical Plant Zone? There you go. I mean, they reuse the nostalgia and the classic levels so much. Even in Sonic Frontiers, you still get Chemical Plant and Green Hill Zone and the cyber stages. We just can't get away from it. So is Sonic Mania a virtual reality manipulation? This is really getting confusing, and we haven't even started talking about the levels, which I'm only going to talk about the 4 new ones, the 4 new additions to Sonic Mania. We already know about Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Lava Reef Zone, Hydro City Zone, Metallic Madness Zone, and all these other zones. Let's talk about the main 4 new ones that we got in here. Even though all those have a fresh coat of paint in Act 2 and differences and such, we know what they're about. Let's just move along, even though they have mini bosses in them too. But let's back up for just a moment here. So the Phantom Ruby activates and I guess teleports Sonic into an alternate Green Hill Zone, while the Egg Rebels have fully altered, changed looks. They've gone rogue. They're no longer working for Dr. Eggman. They're out for business for themselves. So you got 3 battlefronts going on with Sonic and his team, Dr. Eggman, and his rogue hardboiled heavies. Yeah, you got 3 teams going at it, and they're hot potatoing the Ruby amongst each other. That's pretty much what happens. So the zones in this game, again, like I said, they're fantastic. You know, majority are from previous titles, remixed, all this fun jazz and blah, blah, blah. And not all the time do you face Dr. Eggman in all these zones. You actually sometimes will face the hard-boiled heavies. You will face Metal Sonic and Stardust Speedway. And it's fantastic. I love this Metal Sonic battle, Stardust Speedway. It is a multi-phase battle that you do, and when you get to his final form, he's ginormous, and he's just like shooting lasers and chasing you down, and you have to defeat him. He's using the Ruby to help him do all that stuff and change his appearance and everything. Heck, in Hydro City, you fight Eggman twice. He's a mini boss, and he's the final boss in Hydro City Zone. That's crazy. You get to drive the Egg-O-Matic vehicle in Act 1 and just basically you're trying to bring Eggman up from the water while he's planting bombs. Wait a minute, you stupid idiot! Why would you do such a thing? Why would you leave your Egg-O-Matic for Sonic to use? I'm never going to take this guy serious again. Never. Alright, let's talk about these new zones. First up, Studio Opera Zone. Zone was featured in the trailer. And it was one of the early soundtrack samples that you could hear and listen to. It's basically a studio theme with lights, camera, and action, brother. It is a great time. Act 2 is more of a inside the wiring and chords and such like that. It's kind of weird and all over the place. I like Act 1 better because you get this whole chase down with the hard-boiled heavies in this one, and a helicopter and with missiles. It's pretty fun, actually, and such. But you get to Press Gardens as your next one. Press Gardens is basically like a newspaper production facility, but then you transition to this outside snowy area with trees and icicles and saw blades and such. And the music for this one. Act 2 has like my favorite track out of all. Right there next to Metal Sonic's track, of course. And, Act 2 of Lava Reef Zone. Man, such good. Your other new one is Mirage Saloon. You're basically out in the Old West, brother. Gunslinging out there. Sonic and Tails takes one different path as they're flying the tornado. Knuckles originally starts on the tornado, but if you play the Knuckles character, he gets knocked off the plane, and he has to take an alternate route by foot, while Sonic and Tails chase down Eggman's train. Yeah. But then, Knack the Weasel shows up, or Fang the Sniper, whatever you want to call him these days. Shoots down the plane, they crash land, and now you're walking through the desert into the saloon area. It's great. So it's great. I love that. They still stick to the Sonic 3 and Knuckles formula with the transitions from Act 1 to Act 2 into other zones. It's a great time right there. Titanic Monarch is the final zone, of course. It's the big showdown with you, Dr. Eggman, and it's great. You have a bit of Death Egg Zone elements in there. The mini-boss in Act 1 is basically the mini-boss in Death Egg Zone Act 1, from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and different types of teleportation going on. You face Dr. Eggman, and if you got all the Chaos Emeralds, you go to a final fight where it's you battle a Supersonic battling Eggman and the King Hardboiled Heavy in a triple threat bout over the Ruby. And once that is done, that's where Sonic transports into Sonic Forces, because the Ruby transports him to that timeline or to that dimension, whatever it is. That's what happens. Goodness, did I even mention about the Death Egg robot showing up in Green Hill Act 1? No, because you know what? This idiot right here, who lets you use the Egg-O-Matic in Hydro City Act 1, decides to drop instantly the Death Egg robot in Green Hill Zone Act 2 as the boss fight. And my goodness, it can be difficult a little bit. If you're not used to Sonic games, it can be a difficult fight between you and a Death Egg robot. You start out with the big guns, but then you get stupid later on. Again, I'm not taking this guy serious anymore up here. Oh, goodness. Holy cow. Holy cow. And you want to know another Eggman battle that throws you for a loop? Have you heard of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine? You played Puyo Puyo with Dr. Eggman in Chemical Plant Act 2. A puzzle game? Nobody played that. Nobody cares about that. But it definitely threw a curveball at me. I had a good laugh playing it. And he beat me a few times in that game. It's craziness. But again, this game, despite the elements that you find with it, with all the nostalgia, that sometimes, it's too much, but I still enjoy it. And the fact that it's tied in with Sonic Forces, I hate that aspect too. And this guy still can't be taken serious either because of his stupidity. A guy with an IQ at 300 can't be taken serious because sometimes he gets it right and other times he gets it wrong. But overall, Sonic Mania is a great experience. And with the new DLC that was dropped a year later after initial release, they have an encore mode and they add 2 new characters. Mighty the Armadillo, who's been missing since Knuckles Chaotix, and now he's missing again. And then Ray the Flying Squirrel. If you like the Cape Feather in Super Mario World, then Ray the Flying Squirrel is just for you. Mighty Armadillo, well, he's got that hard ground pound, and he can take a hit on the spikes just once to recover because of his hard shell. I wish we could see Mighty the Armadillo more often. But Sega, I don't know what you're doing with that guy, because he shows up, he's gone for the longest time, and he's just sporadically back out of nowhere to disappear again. Mighty Armadillo, put up the missing posters once more because he's missing again. But with that being said, go check out Sonic Mania. It is a fun time. That is my review. That is my take on it. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe out there. And take care. Let's go. I'll take you out back.